All right. Online, I go by the name Astra. I used to be really big into role playing. Now I just kind of play a lot of games, hang out, buy some art more specifically. Not so much an artist myself. I really just like kind of hanging out in communities. I like making new friends, not a shy person. That's about it. I am working about 60 plus hours a week right now.
Oh, wow.
Things are pretty busy. So Auth, she was actually made in one of those old RPs that I used to play in. She legitimately just started out as an egg. Eventually, she grew into a character, and then through some weird plot magic, she just became full-aged. Now we have this furred dragon who grew up kind of made to be a scientist. I just love her design. I really do. It's really simple, but I love the colors. Turquoise is a big color for me. This is my only other character, so I don't get to use many different colors. I got my blue and turquoise. That's about it.
You say that. How many characters do you have then?
Depending on if you count characters without art, we're going up to a massive 4, and characters with art 2. I realize that's not actually a crazy amount, but
It's all about how much time and dedication you have to each individual one. Some people really is just one character and they just put everything into it. How long have you had this character?
oh my goodness. Just under 4 years?
Wow. Yeah, that is a sizable amount of time for having a character. They were made for a RP, or made for / out of an RP. Did you kind of have a say in the design of them? Or was it just like, here's what they are, and you just grew to like it?
So due to the way the RP was set up, it was like anything goes, and I basically got to choose exactly what it looked like due to one of the systems in the RP. At any point, anyone can do anything. It wasn't exactly the greatest system, but it kept the RP fun, and the person who was actually the other parent of the character left the server before it was fully introduced. They didn't really have much input on it. I kind of made it by myself. For dragon, I love dragons as a species, but I also really like furry stuff, as the fandom's name would imply. I wanted to make a character, and at this point in my life, I was just obsessed with this specific RP. Now it's been so long that I haven't really looked back on it much, which I think is why I don't have that much art of this character.
What drew you to the design? You say that, you really like turquoise, you wanted a dragon character, and that you really liked the design. What are some of the things that you really appreciate of it? And you say that you made them, so tell us a little bit about making them.
So with the irises, I always have had a huge thing for bioluminescence. So I wanted some sort of bright eye that would fit in for the color, and I just kind of went with this brightish yellow. And the horns, I've never really liked horns that stick straight up and out. I kind of like the ones that stay in closer to the face, which I know is strange with my main Sona being a deer, but I don't know. I like the main closer horn style. And the brown shading of the fur was actually inspired by the original mother of the character, even though she didn't really go in with creating it at all. I thought it would just be nice to have some sort of callback. Who doesn't like a nice story with things?
You've had nothing but good things to say on them this whole time, enjoying working on them and enjoying getting them in the first place, and just all the colors and everything. Why haven't they been drawn lately? Why haven't they gotten a whole lot of love lately?
So my whole main thing is, when I say I go to a convention and I want to show someone art, I'm not going to pull up a side character that I haven't used in 3 years and say, hey, look at this character. Isn't this cool? I feel like I usually start with Astra because that character basically is me. Instead of showing someone something that's just kind of off on the side, something that I haven't really put as much into, then why not just show them the one that I have everything into? Kind of the sunk cost fallacy has caused this one to get left behind.
If it's a, sunk cost fallacy or anything like that, I guess, do you have any ideas with the character, or any possible plans or things you might want to see with them in the future? Or is it right now just they kind of just exist as a character you think is pretty?
Well, at some point, I'd like to kind of start spending more on art. I think that's kind of one of my issues at the moment, actually. I have very fond memories of back then. So I look back on it and I think it would be nice to have something to remember that time by. I think it would just be nice to bring that story back into the character.
So if you, kind of like the idea of working on them in the future, I guess that leads me to the question I always have to ask. What do you consider a forgotten character? Like, you approached me with this character and this design, and you've only gotten so much of them in a few years, but you seem really excited and interested in them going further. What do you consider forgotten?
Well, I would say that this is a forgotten character simply just because even though I know about them, most of the people who talk to me don't know about them. It's not that I have forgotten about them per se, it's just the greater general audience, I guess I would say, doesn't know about them.
That is a fascinating take for what a forgotten character is. Most of the time we hear, it's someone that I've not drawn very much or I've not thought about in a long time. But you're coming at us from the opposite direction, saying no one else has thought about them in such a long time.
I think it's one of the reasons why I've avoided getting art for them, just because if I randomly show up with this art of a character most people don't even know of, it's going to have less of that recognition factor. At least the people that know me, people know Astra. Nobody really knows Auth, so they're going to have to build up this liking for them, which they've already done with Astra, at least hopefully.
Why haven't you gotten any art of the character to kind of build that recognition if that's something you feel is really important to the lead-in?
Art costs money. It's not really unfortunate. It's just the way things have to go. And with a limited amount of funds, I have to decide how to allocate them. And most of the time I think it's going to be better spent getting art for the character that people already know and already like than spending it on something else where I'm going to have to do all this effort. And like I said, it's going to go into the sunk cost. If I get one piece of art, I'm going to have to continue spending money on them. And then I feel bad because I'm leaving Astra out. And when you leave your main character out of things, it just kind of gets weird, I feel.
To have a side thing here, that's actually kind of why I redesigned Zay. I caught myself having never drawn the fox in over like a year and a half. And I went, all right, let's make it something that I want to do. I can definitely understand from that perspective of like, well, if you're not doing this, if you're not using this character that should be an important character, what's happening? So yeah, I can definitely understand and appreciate kind of where you're coming from. You kind of said earlier that they were designed to like be a scientist from birth. What do you mean by that? Is that like strictly like, the RP world setting stuff, or is that actually more of a character trait thing about her?
So in the RP world, it was a big group of people, and then they would all go to this one person. And this one person was a scientist, and he was also the creator of the server, which is why he was the head of all the in-universe stuff. People would go to him, and his character was this super genius scientist. And Auth, when the character was created, I was already a veteran of the server. As the main owner of the server started showing up a lot less, we needed somebody to be the person people would go to. And Auth just so happened to be a new character showing up from someone who had been in the server for a long time. So we made her the go-to character. She was the one who would take over a lot of the plot relevance, and that's just for that specific world. However, when I do think about her, I maintain that she is very smart.
She was basically being turned into like the head of this universe, if I'm kind of hearing that correctly, understanding that correctly.
Essentially, all of the plot points would in turn have to go through her, which wasn't the best setup for a roleplay server, but it's just how we'd gotten used to doing things. So by then we were like, well, changing it would kind of mess some stuff up, and this guy isn't being active anymore, so we need someone to take over that spot. And there she was. So
this design was incredibly relevant very quickly to a lot of people. That's a very different situation than we're actually used to hearing here. How did that stop?
Well, a lot of it happened with kind of that owner leaving. And then I took over the ownership position of the server. And along with it, the responsibilities of advertising and keeping everything busy was all left on me. I think at that time, a lot of people were looking for more structured role plays. We kept going with just our group. We were having very few people join the server, but after a certain amount of time, there's just little that you can do with the same characters doing the same things. So eventually it just slowed down.
Would you say that, Auth is kind of like a memento of those times at this point?
Yeah, I do think a lot about the server when I kind of think about the Auth design, because she's completely linked to it. There's no way to separate that from her character. Even when I'm just thinking about the character Auth, like I said, I still think about that, how she's intelligent and a smart, loving person, which all originated from that roleplay server. If it wasn't for that, she could literally just be a blank slate of a character.
So, would you ever consider developing them in a different direction? Like, say you wanted to come back to her suddenly and go, maybe I want to turn you into something else. Would that even be something you would consider? Or is that just completely out of the question?
So, the more I think about it, it's kind of like I would want to keep her connected to the other server, but it's not even that I'm opposed to getting art of her or anything like that. I just don't think I would bring her into a new unknown situation. As a character, I think she's done her development.
That's actually a fascinating little statement, right? She's done her development. One aspect that I've seen a lot with forgotten characters is there's nothing more to do with them, right? They have reached the end of the development cycle. Every new piece of art, every new thing would just be a rehash of something that's already done. Though you say you've only gotten 2 pieces of her, so that's not quite the case here. So it's interesting that you feel like the development has been done. She's kind of reached the state that she's a fully made character, but that's more so with the RP side of things and the story-driven side of things versus the opposite side, which is the art side of things.
Yeah, I think that's completely correct. While I've spent a lot of time with her doing things in her shoes, I haven't so much done anything with her visually. It's all just been events that have taken place in a story.
So if the character is, done, right? They've made all the development, you've made all the development for them that, you feel is appropriate for them. What would make you drop them as a character? Say, you know what, you're done. I'm going to send you off to a new home, or like I'm retiring you as a character design.
It goes back to the thing we were talking about before with just the fact that when I'm talking to people, my first thought isn't, hey, look at this character from this roleplay that you didn't interact with. Maybe for the people who did interact with that roleplay, new art of her is very interesting. But for everyone else, it's just, another furred dragon that looks okay.
He feels that the impact of the character is lost a lot of the times with new individuals interacting with them because they don't know all the history and, impact that the character has had in so many communities and so many people. The opposite side is not considered with that exact statement. How interesting would it be to introduce this character that you have so much development and so much love for to a whole new audience and say, hey, check out this character. Look at all these things that I've done with them, even just all these things that I've figured out with them. And now we're all going to get to see the art made together and get to see this developed in this whole new media, But it'd be really cool to see that stuff made and shown to all these new people who never got a chance to see it before.
That's a really good point that I honestly hadn't thought of before, because most of the time I'm just thinking, in my in-group, who's going to enjoy this as it comes out? I don't really think about who are the new people who might like this character, who are the people that might be interested in the story behind where the character came from. It's just who already knows where the character came from and who wants to see the character continue.
That actually just sounds like a really good endpoint. Holy shit. Do you have any kind of closing thoughts or closing statements?
Well, I hope that for me personally, this could be used as kind of more inspiration. As I've said throughout this interview, I really do enjoy the character. I just haven't thought that other people would share the same feelings for it because they weren't there. But I'm hoping that getting back into this character and why I like them so much and just thinking about them more will make me more willing to purchase art for them in the future. Thank you for enjoying the character that I've created.
And I thank you for spending all the time talking to us about her.